my fellow comic book collectors. It's on the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Each week, people write me questions in the comments below, and the week following, I will answer them. Because it's Christmas, next week, if you have questions, please realize that you have to ask me them in the next couple days, because that's the only time I'll have a chance to record it. So get your questions to me as soon as possible so I can answer them next week. So yeah, with that all said, let's get right into the questions this week. First question comes from Kay Munin, who wrote, Vampirella versus Zombie Tramp. Who wins and why? So these are two of my favorite characters. Actually, Vampirella is my favorite character. But this is one of those sad things. So Zombie Tramp is also a great character. I love Zombie Tramp as well. But I think Zombie Tramp would win of the two. And it's really up to their abilities. And Vampirella's abilities are, she's got speed, power, strength. She can change into a bat. She's smart. Those are kind of her abilities that, you know, standard kind of vampire abilities. She has, like, claws, but she can kind of use her hands like claws and kind of rip Zombie Tramp apart, which normally should win a battle. If it was just Vampirella versus Zombie Tramp as Zombie Tramp one person, Vampirella would win. Zombie Tramp, however, has some cool abilities as well. She is magical, so she can actually transfer her body to another body. So you kill that one body, you chop off the arms, whatever you do to it, it doesn't matter, because she'll just transfer into another body. She can also control other people, and she can bring an undead to her aid as well. So she's actually quite magical and quite powerful as a result. So that's why I think ultimately Zombie Tramp would win, because it's almost impossible to kill Zombie Tramp. So with all that being said, it's just a Zombie Tramp would win. Next question comes from Adrift. I was flipping through my volumes of the Gerber's Photojournal Guide to Comics and came across a comic called Bold Stories, 1950, Kirby Publishing. The issues displayed in the guide look very, very much something you would have in your collection. Do you have any issues? So I don't have any issues of Bold Stories. Bold Stories is really expensive. It's a digest kind of size book. I'm quite aware of it. Actually, I did bid on it once on a Heritage auction sale, and it sold for several $1,000s. Really expensive, more than I would want to pay for a digest book. Part of the reason why it goes for big money is it has these kind of sexy covers. I think it ran 3 issues. The first issue's kind of got this girl wearing like balloons as an outfit that are being popped. Inside actually contains nudity, which is interesting for the Golden Age, so that's another reason why it's kind of more of a valuable book. Yeah, I don't have any in my collection. They're quite rare. Actually, issue number 1 is the least rare, but it's extremely rare. Number 2 and 3 are almost ghosts. I've never seen them actually ever offered. So yeah, I don't have any of them in my collection, but I'd love to. I mean, they're cool books, but just don't have them. Next question comes from Mike LeBlond. Question for next week. Was Quality Comics part of DC Comics? Were they bought by them, or were they a subsidiary of DC all along? Okay, so Quality Comics, for those that are not aware of Quality Comics, they were the ones that produced the comic Police Comics, and basically all the characters associated to Police Comics, like Plastic Man, Phantom Lady. They also produced Dollman, and they also produced Torchy and Blackhawk. So there's a bunch of key characters that were created by Quality Comics. When so a couple things happened to Quality Comics that, they were their own publisher all along, but by 1956 they went out of business. A couple things kind of happened. They were losing readership to television and things like that, but also they were losing a lot of strength due to the Comic Code Authority. They were one of the casualties of the Comic Code Authority coming into play. So by 1956 they were defunct. DC at the end of 1956 bought the rights to the Quality characters. Basically, they bought the rights to the characters, and then they continued the stories on. So Blackhawk, I think, ran for another 100 issues. They also did DC. DC had GI Combat as another series that ran quite long afterwards. And they even had the title Heartthrobs, and even had the title from Quality of Robin Hood. And what they did actually in the DC universe is they actually created two universes to kind of handle the Quality characters. They created one which was Earth X, and then they created another universe called Earth Quality. So Earth Quality is just like the normal Earth arrangement where the history is the same. Earth X, though, in it, the Nazis actually win the Second World War. And the reason they had that is so that they could carry on certain characters which had sort of a World War II kind of element to them, like Phantom Lady and Dollman, who basically carried on in the Freedom Fighters, which was running through DC's Earth X. So that was kind of the way that DC managed those characters. Once Crisis of Infinite Earths came out, that all get mixed up, but that's what they did up till then. But they bought the rights to Plastic Man later on, and they released the first Plastic Man in the Silver Age in 1966. The thing is, with DC, what they would do is, because they had all these characters that they had sort of the rights to from Quality, they would publish stories once in a while with them just to sort of maintain the copyright. So that was another thing that they would do. So that's the history. A little bit of the history of Quality Comics. Very cool title, company, because they produced so many of the characters that we associate with DC Comics. Okay. Next question comes from John Edwards. You have that Slave Girl number 2, which is this one right there, which I have, but since you have number 1, I hunted it down. What are your favorite Avon books? Okay, so there's a whole bunch of Avon books. If you're not familiar with Avon as a company, basically they produced, Slave Girl, which I do like, but they produced a lot of sci-fi and horror titles, and some romance, but not much. So we got, and a little bit of westerns. So we got Cowpuncher is one of the titles I like, because it's good girl art. I really like good girl art. This one's a nice flame cover. I'll show you a few Cowpunchers. And they would have like artists like Al Omer, and this is done by Jack Heyman. So they also produced The Saint, which I have a bunch of, but I didn't bring. But as I said, they did a lot of sci-fi stuff that I really like. These are one-shots. An Earthman on Venus. And as I said, they did horror titles like Eerie. This is one of my favorite covers from the run of Eerie. Again, another good girl headlight cover, so kind of a fun one. And we also have some more Eerie. Eerie would include artists like Wally Wood, which is sort of cool. This is a Wally Wood cover. That's why I mentioned that. Another Avon one that is a really great cover and just a cool book, is Witchcraft. This is, what's his name? Kelly Freeze. Just a really great cover. And they did some crime books as well. One of the titles is Police Lineup, but they also did Gangsters and Gun Malls and a bunch of other ones. Let me show you a couple police lineups. But I mostly associate sci-fi with Avon, strangely enough. And some of the titles would be like Space Detective. Again, these would feature Joe Orlando or Wally Wood art. I believe this is Wally Wood. And another title is Strange Worlds. I really like this one, the girl with the bikini. Because if you're in outer space, you gotta wear a bikini. It's basically dress code. So this is a Jean Fawcett cover. And one more to show, another on Strange Worlds. It's a really cool one. They also did a lot of really cool horror titles like Phantom Witch Doctor and Diary of Horror. And some other cool sci-fi ones they did would be Rocket to the Moon. I'm just trying to think of some others. Yeah, so those are some of the titles that, and I have a pretty good Avon collection. There's a lot of titles, but I actually have a fairly good collection of Avon books. But this is just a small sampling of those. Hope you enjoyed. Mike Swintel wrote, who did the cover art for Brand Eck? Okay, one sec here. Oof, I gotta move these. Okay, I did bring, so Brand Eck number 2 was the question. That was done by Marie Severin, and I actually don't have Brand Eck number 2, but I have number 1. I believe this is also Marie Severin. So, it's actually not Brand Eck. So, it's sort of a Marvel's humor book. Yeah, it's kind of a fun one. Okay, so yeah, so Marie Severin. Okay, Troy Evans wrote, with superhero movies set in modern times with facial recognition surveillance, it's not possible for mass superheroes to maintain their secret identity. I believe that superhero movies made in the future will have to help audiences suspend their disbelief concerning secret identities by being period movies. For example, a Spider-Man movie set in the 60s or a Batman movie set in the 40s. I suspect James Gunn could handle this problem by photos taken of Superman would be blurred to his speed. What is your opinion of the superhero period movies to the plausibility of maintaining their secret identity for modern audiences? Well, there's a very famous line in Shakespeare, and I believe it's for Twelfth Night, where the line goes, when you enter Illyria, suspend your disbelief. And the idea is this, that any world that you enter that is written by a writer, you have to suspend some of your disbelief. You have to kind of check some of your brain at the door that you believe the narrative that they're setting up, the world that they're creating for you. So that is true back in the day and today. That, you know, there's certain things that we have to sort of say, okay, Superman's glasses somehow hides his identity. You know, that is true back then and back into today. I mean, you don't need facial recognition software to realize that Clark Kent is Superman. The glasses don't fool anybody. But when you enter Illyria, you have to suspend your disbelief. So that's really what is required. It's not about setting comics in in like some period mere movie or anything like that. It's about the audience accepting the certain realities that somehow the characters aren't recognizable in their superhero form. So that's just part of the nature of the movie, that you have to sort of accept that. So, but I do like the idea of doing period movies. I actually talked about that in the previous video where I was talking about, bringing back some of these Golden Age characters. And I thought it would be fun to do that as a period movie, especially more about the attitudes of the people themselves, the culture of the time, versus a secret identity thing. I think that's a harder thing to overcome than whether people would recognize them. I think people's attitudes towards women or towards society in general are different today than they were 50, 60 years ago. So it's very hard for people to, oh, why is she acting so weak? Or why are women acting like women? That would be a much harder thing to accept than to accept the idea of Superman's glasses hiding his identity. So that's, I think period pieces are good for that, where you can sort of say, oh, this was the way it was. It makes it a little easier to suspend your disbelief when you do set up that period piece. So, okay, hopefully that answers that question. Last question. So not that many questions this week, so just a few, but this is the last question. It's a good one. Matt Likes Comics wrote, what is your opinion of the Wonder Woman family stories of the late 50s and early 60s? Okay, so basically what happened was, I think in early issues, like in the early hundreds, they introduced characters like Wonder Tot and Wonder Girl, and these were younger versions of Wonder Woman. So they would have the they sort of like the Superboy idea, where what was Wonder Woman like as a child or as a teen, and they did a bunch of stories with those characters independently. Now in issue 124, this issue, we get them all together. This is actually I always mess up her name. Hippolyta, Hippolyta, and which is actually Diana Troy's mother. So you get the whole family, right? So you get Wonder Tot, Wonder Girl, and Wonder Woman. So the way that they explain it in the stories, the idea is this: what if we could put them all together in a story? And so what they did was, in the story, they basically edit them into like they have pictures that they've collected of from the archives of Wonder Woman, and they splice those out together to create this situation where they're all together in a scene. That's the way that they explain it in the comic. And basically they create a story where they're all together and they have to go out on an adventure to stop it's impossible, what's it called, what's the guy's name, Multiple Man, so he can change shape, basically, go from one thing to the next thing. He's at first a missile, then he becomes like a gas monster, and then this guy becomes like multiple things that they have to fight, and he even becomes a Tyrannosaurus Rex at the end of the story, and they have to fight him as a team. So basically it's an interesting story. This scene actually happens in the story, by the way. That's the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I mean, I like more the Wonder Woman by herself stories, if that makes sense. Wasn't necessarily a big fan of Wonder Tot or Wonder Girl. I kind of like Wonder Woman to be an adult and just do her own stories. But I think they were really trying to leverage the success of Superboy and thus do the same kind of stuff in Wonder Woman title. Um, I wasn't a fan. The stories aren't bad. I have to be nice to the stories. The stories are pretty cool. Like they go all over the place. I mean, it's cool that they even time travel and they do some pretty cool stuff. But I prefer Wonder Woman just by herself, I guess would be the way to say it. Yeah. But I actually find Wonder Tot pretty annoying in some ways. I just, I don't know. But yeah, it was an experiment that they did. Yeah, that'd be my opinion about it. Personally, I just like Wonder Woman to do her own thing. So yeah. So those are all the questions for this week. I hope you enjoyed my answers. Yeah, thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, again, try to get them to me as soon as possible, and I will answer them next week. And if you don't hear from me by then, Merry Christmas, by the way. Okay.